He has a ring and I found out that he's planning to propose on our anniversary, but I feel like I've mentally checked out, 1.5 years after he first told me we were going to get engaged soon. My partner bought the ring a long time ago. He previously insisted that we had to live together to see if we were compatible, before he could propose, and that he wouldn't propose otherwise. I have been ready for much longer than he has and that's not his fault of course. But after waiting and waiting, I have gone from anxiety, to hope, to excitement, and finally just numbness. He didn't intend for me to know but my sister, who helped him finalize the ring out of the ones I had liked, was happy about it and couldn't keep the secret that he's proposing in just under a week. It makes sense now that he was trying to get me to take a couple of days off to go away for a mini break to the town in which we met, but I couldn't get leave approved. She noticed that I've been feeling quite low throughout the holiday season and she thought it was because I was waiting for a proposal. But the reality is that I gave up on it a month or two ago. I've tried to convince myself that it's what I still want but that ship has sailed. It's quite strange to be in the process of falling out of love with him gradually. He's 29 and I'm about to turn 29. I fear I'm being irrational here, because in total we've been together for only 3 years. But he's been telling me for 1.5 years that he will soon propose. I feel compelled to say yes now because everything is in place, but I don't feel in love with him anymore. He seems happy to talk about marriage now and has brought up marrying in autumn a bunch of times, and I wish I still felt the same joy at discussing wedding plans that I did before. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. 3 years is nothing considering you could be spending the rest of your life with this person. Be glad you realized now. Reply. I've only begun feeling this way because he kept saying a proposal was coming soon and didn't propose for 1.5 years. And his insistence on living together when he knew it was not something I was comfortable with without being engaged. How long ago did OOP move in with her boyfriend? Was it fine for her to live with him? Reply. Only a few months ago, and I shouldn't have done it because I was not happy to. I used to share a flat with my friend and had done so for years. The only way to live together was to move into the flat that he's been renting because he lives on his own. Big mistake doing something that didn't feel right to me at all. No, it's actually been fine living with him but living together before engagement was really something I did not want to do but he made it a condition to getting engaged after he bought the ring earlier in the year. I shouldn't have agreed to it but I did, and that's where the resentment has come from, along with the 1.5-year wait. Commenter 2. To feel that much resentment after such a rather short time is a sign that you weren't right for each other anyway. Honestly, 3 years of dating and requesting to live with each other before marriage are totally reasonable, at your age. Objectively you are being a bit unfair here but if you are just not feeling it anymore so be it, it's better to end things now before the engagement, this is no base for a lifetime commitment. Reply. I don't think feeling resentment after waiting for 1.5 years is soon at all. He said he would propose soon and soon is not more than a few months. Certainly not over a year. He should have been honest that he wasn't ready instead of dragging this for 1.5 years. I'm blaming her BF for her choices, and she needs to communicate with her boyfriend about the issue. Reply. I don't believe I am, especially as he wasn't communicating clearly with me on the issue until a few months ago. Sometimes you do things that you feel will work out fine but you don't realize until later how they will make you feel. I felt pushed into making that decision because of the various conversations that we had earlier this year, in which he shared things that he should have done a long time ago. Commenter 3. 2 questions. Numbness aside, do you want to marry him? Like take away all of the pomp and circumference and the emotional politics around it, do you want him to be your life partner? What the fuck is up with your sister? Why did she spill the beans? I get if she knew you were checking out and felt you needed a heads up, but if she didn't know that, and it doesn't sound like she did, what she did isn't okay. Anyway, it's normal to be almost a little blue when getting engaged later than you wanted. It doesn't mean this won't work out, unless you don't want it to. It could mean that you just need to have a good, healthy fight where you air out all of your frustration that he has held you hostage on this for so long. Reply. 1. There was a time, until recently, when I really wanted him to be my life partner and I thought we were a good match, but not anymore. 2. She was mistaken and thought that I had been feeling low because he hadn't proposed, so she was trying to cheer me up thinking I'd be thrilled. He told her he had everything planned and ready for a proposal on our anniversary, so she thought I would be happy. Update. In the middle of 2023, he said he was proposing soon, but a year later he still hadn't and finally admitted he wouldn't until we lived together, even though he had bought a ring. This was despite me asking him a couple of times what was holding things up, and he always assured me it would happen soon. After he finally shared this with me, he kept insisting I move in, even though I wasn't interested in that before an engagement. But I did because of how much I loved him, and the resentment had been slowly building up ever since. I know it's my fault for moving in, and I should have been firmer about my boundaries. He knew from very early on that I didn't want to set up a household/home with a partner without an engagement. Early in the relationship, 8 to 9 months in, he wanted me to move in, but I told him that I wouldn't do that with someone unless I was going to marry the person and was engaged. He said at the time that was okay and that he understood. So why did he say he was going to propose soon last year, knowing where we stood on this matter? Knowing he was going to propose and realizing I didn't want to marry him anymore, I told him on Saturday night that we couldn't be together anymore. He didn't take it well. He told me I had blindsided him and that he thought we both wanted a future together. He initially said he didn't know what he did wrong, and I had to explain to him that he knew we had issues regarding him always having his way and him knowing I was uncomfortable about moving in before an engagement. The truth is, whenever we disagree, I always end up giving in. He doesn't compromise and isn't very flexible. I've pointed this out to him before, and he accepted that it was an issue, yet nothing changed. Now that I'm ending things, he's saying he'll work on it and it's not something to break up over. We could probably work through the resentment and improve our communication, but I don't know if I'll ever feel the same way about him again. Also, given that he kept saying he was proposing soon but waited for 18 months, I worry that he might again drag his feet when it comes to other things like having kids or even with planning the wedding. He woke up this morning, the 31st, the day he was planning to propose on as it's our anniversary, and said he couldn't believe what was happening. He said it didn't feel real because we should be getting engaged today, but instead, we were in the process of breaking up. He even asked at one point if we could try again, saying our relationship had been happy for both of us, and that living together we had been very compatible, irrespective of how I felt about moving in. He asked if I would consider giving the relationship another chance if we took a break from each other for some time. Again, I don't think this is a good idea. The days since I ended the relationship have been really tough, but it was the right thing to do because we are incompatible. People in my previous post mentioned that I just wanted to marry and get engaged and didn't care who to, but that's not true. My ex, whom I was with from university, was keen to marry me and brought it up soon after we started our first jobs. However, there were a range of issues in that relationship, and I didn't think it would work. So, after trying to resolve our issues and not being able to for a year, I had to end that relationship. If a marriage and engagement were all I wanted, I would have married him and ignored the issues. I genuinely thought my current partner, well ex now, and I were a great match, but I suppose I was wrong. I was living in a flat with a friend, and it was ideal for me in every way. I had to find someone to take over my lease, and I did this to move in with him. Now I have to start looking for a new place again. I've already started, and fortunately, I live in a city where finding a place won't be too difficult. My friend said I should not move out in a rush since I'm paying half the rent toward his place, but the reality is that this place never felt like home because I moved in begrudgingly. Again, I know it's my fault, but I can't live in what is essentially his home if we aren't going to be together. My sister said that I should think about the fact that I'm going to be 29 and about how it might be difficult to find someone to have children with before I hit my mid-30s, but it's better to be single than in a relationship that's not right. I know I might not meet anyone else anytime soon or at all, because you never know what life is going to bring, but that's okay. There are other things in my life that I plan to focus on, like studying for a post-grad diploma that I have been wanting to do for some time. I know he'll be fine soon as he's quite resilient, and then both of us can get on with our lives. Relevant comments. Commenter. In this case his hesitancy paid off because it allowed the OP to realize that they weren't compatible for reasons unrelated to proposing. He was correct not to propose. It saved a future divorce. This wasn't his intent, but the overall issue here was I wasn't happy with how decisions were made in the relationship, the partner was. It took years for the OP to express this. Now that she has both can move on with their lives. In this case the issue appears to be she didn't communicate with him the issues she was having. He was quite clear that he wanted to live with someone before getting married and proposed after a reasonable length of time after it occurred. It's good she was finally able to communicate and move on. Reply, he was not clear about this and waited a year to tell me why he wasn't proposing. And this was after earlier in the relationship, when he wanted us to live together, I had told him I wouldn't live with someone unless the relationship was going to lead to marriage and I was engaged, and he said that was fine and continued the relationship. Commenter 1, did he need help with bills? Why did you need to move in and pay half? Reply, he didn't need help with paying the bills, but I chose to pay as I think that's fair. I would not be comfortable with him picking up the bills for both of us when we both work. Commenter 2, he didn't fight for you. You'll meet the one. You know now what you don't want and that's a good start, and stick to your boundaries and goals. Always. Reply, he's been quite difficult since that day, particularly about me leaving and looking for somewhere to move, but I don't want him to make it any more difficult by fighting for me. Just can't wait to be out of this place. Commenter 3, he doesn't compromise and isn't very flexible. I've pointed this out to him before, and he accepted that it was an issue, yet nothing changed. You are doing the right thing. Commenter 4. Don't fall for the trap of going back to a man who is only willing to consider changing his ways when you already have your foot out the door. He won't change, and even if he does, it will only be temporary. Stories number 2. Aita for refusing to attend my brother's funeral because he faked his death to teach me a lesson. Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my brother's funeral because he faked his death to teach me a lesson? So, here's the story. My 26F brother, Jason, 28M, has always been a bit dramatic. He thrives on pulling elaborate pranks and teaching life lessons that no one asked for. A few weeks ago, I forgot to pick him up from the airport because I was stuck at work, and my phone died. He ended up taking an Uber home, but he was clearly mad and kept saying things like, "What if something bad happened to me? Would you even notice?" Fast forward to last week, when I got a frantic call from our mom, sobbing and telling me Jason had died in a car accident. I was devastated. She told me there was going to be a small memorial service at our family's house, and I needed to come immediately. I took the day off work, bought a black dress, and even wrote a speech about how much Jason meant to me. I showed up at the house, only to walk into the living room and see Jason, alive, sitting in a chair with a smug look on his face. The rest of my family was there too, looking sheepish. Jason stood up and said, "Surprise. Now you know how it feels to lose me." I lost. Apparently, this whole thing was an elaborate stunt to teach me a lesson about valuing the people in my life. He said he wanted to make sure I'd never forget to pick him up or take him for granted again. My mom and dad had gone along with it because they didn't know how else to get through to me. I called him a psychopath and stormed out. Now Jason is furious, saying I'm being dramatic and can't take a joke. My parents think I should let it go because, technically, no one got hurt. But I've refused to speak to Jason since, and I told my family I'm not attending any future events if he's there. Jason texted me last night, saying I'm being immature and making him look bad to the rest of the family. A few relatives have chimed in, saying I overreacted and need to lighten up. Am I the a-hole for cutting off my brother after his fake funeral stunt? Or should I have just laughed it off and appreciated the lesson? Because right now, I'm seriously questioning if I'm in the twilight zone. Stories number 3. Aita for not pursuing a relationship after learning my date is transgender. I'm a cis lesbian woman who's recently started using dating apps to meet new people. While I've noticed some profiles include statements like, "no trans," I've always felt that was unnecessarily exclusionary and unkind. Personally, I'm open to trans friendships and connections, but I also know I'm only physically attracted to partners who have female genitalia. A few weeks ago, I matched with an incredibly beautiful woman. We had so many mutual interests, and our conversations flowed naturally. It seemed like there was real potential, so I asked her out. When we met in person, the chemistry was undeniable. It felt like we'd known each other for years, and I couldn't believe how comfortable and at ease I felt with her. Midway through the date, she disclosed that she's transgender. She explained that while she's had breast augmentation, she hasn't had bottom surgery and isn't sure if she ever will. She also mentioned she doesn't include this detail in her profile because she's afraid of being rejected before people even give her a chance. I was caught off guard, but I did my best to stay composed. I thanked her for trusting me enough to share something so personal and reassured her that she should always feel safe being herself. We continued the date, and I genuinely enjoyed her company. However, as much as I liked her personality and how well we clicked, I realized I couldn't move forward romantically because of my preferences. The next day, I gently explained my feelings, making it clear that my decision wasn't about her worth or identity but about my personal boundaries and comfort in a relationship. She was understandably upset and accused me of leading her on and being discriminatory. Now I'm questioning whether I handled this situation the right way or if I should have approached it differently. Am I the asshole for not pursuing a relationship after learning my date is transgender? Stories number 4. Aita for not letting my in-laws drive my infant without a car seat. Basically, my wife's parents are stubborn and don't want to have a car seat in their car. My child is 11 months old, and they think a seatbelt on top of a towel is fine. I am putting my foot down and refusing to allow them to transport my child in their vehicle. This is causing a rift, and my wife says I should just let it go, because they did the same thing with her when she was young and she never got hurt. Aita. Edit. Alright, based on the advice here, I called my father-in-law and told him I would buy them a car seat, but they will need to use it if they want my child in their vehicle. He said he would think about it. 5 minutes later, my wife comes storming in screaming at me for going behind her back, so I guess he wasn't impressed and called her. Anyway, she called me a fucking pussy, and I told her she can leave. And she did. So yeah, guess I'm a single dad now. Edit 2, wow, this really blew up. I should add some context. My in-laws are usually sane and good people, but are from an Eastern Bloc country and so a bit old school in some of their thinking. My wife is back home now and has apologized. She agrees that our child should ride in a car seat. My in-laws are going to watch him tomorrow and she has agreed to tell them that the baby must be in a car seat. Maybe I'll provide another update in a few days. Update. So first thing this morning I head to Walmart and pick up a car seat for my in-laws. The plan was they were taking my kid for the day, as I work and my wife had a lengthy medical appointment. My in-laws arrives, I set up the car seat in his car, father-in-law is a bit grumpy but mostly okay. They leave with my kid and all is well. I usually get home from work at 5:30, but I got home a bit early today. Just as I'm pulling in the driveway, my in-laws pull up next to me. My father-in-law looked at me like a cat with a canary in his mouth. I get out of my car and walk up to theirs, and my child is sitting on a fucking stack of folded towels and covered in a blanket with a seatbelt strapped across him. I lost my shit. Words were said and I told them they're never seeing their grandchild again. I also called the non-emergency police line, and they said I can come in and file a police report and they'll refer it to the prosecutor's office. I am going down there tomorrow on my lunch. My wife doesn't want me to pursue charges. She says it's just how her parents are. She knows I'm mad but she has always had a tough time going against her parents. Part of me wants to just never let them near my kid again, but I don't think it's realistic given how close my wife is to her parents. So tough spot. I want to pursue charges, I'm pissed. Pretty sure it's gonna cost me my marriage though. So yeah, fun day, kid is sleeping safe and sound at least. Stories number 5. My 27F marriage is falling apart with the love of my life, 32M, because of his brother, 35M. I will preface this by stating that I love my husband and will do anything it takes to stay with him till the end. We dated for 2 years before marrying last year and before him, my life was a mess. Now I am the happiest person alive with him and never want this relationship to end. I will use fake names for my husband, John, and his brother, Brian. To start, this all began a year ago before the wedding. Brian had always been a screw-up his entire life but 2 years ago sobered up and moved in with his and John's parents. John's father owns a car dealership and is quite wealthy. John grew up quite rich but never liked that lifestyle and decided to become a nurse instead of working for his father. Brian started working at the dealership and has turned his life around according to John's parents. I had met a few times and he had creeped me out and was very inappropriate. He commented about my ass and even tried to grope me once but John stopped him. I was very adamant before the wedding about not inviting Brian. John has a strong relationship with both his parents and it's a reason why I admire him. So when John's parents would not attend if Brian could not, I gave in and invited Brian. That is where everything went wrong. The wedding was amazing but Brian came up with a so-called prank. He found a half-full can of red paint in the church utility closet and thought it would be funny to dump it on me after the ceremony. When I went to the bathroom he jumped around the corner and splashed the paint all over me and the dress. I was hysterical and wanted to call the cops on Brian. John calmed me down and kicked Brian out of the wedding. A bridesmaid lived nearby and I used her shower and she lent me a dress to wear. From then on I have never talked or been near Brian. John is very understanding but every year insists we go to his parents for Thanksgiving and Christmas. He will not budge and says that he cannot cut his parents out of his life. However, Brian is still living with his parents and attended Thanksgiving and Christmas with them last year. I somehow got through both last year never going near Brian and staying next to John the entire time. Last week I got sent an image of a penis. Then a text following saying, I bet you mine is bigger than my brother's. I do not know how he got a hold of my number and I was disgusted beyond all belief. I wanted to again call the cops but John told me that would just allow for Brian to torment us more. Yesterday, I told John the first will not attend Thanksgiving or Christmas with his family under no circumstances. John was very conflicted about the whole matter. He said that his parents are great people and that Thanksgiving and Christmas are all he has with them. This has been by far the biggest strain on our relationship and I can feel John and I moving apart. I do not know how to discuss this with John and I need help. I have never done this before and for the first time, I am going to the internet with this issue and instead of John. What can I do to fix this situation? Am I being irrational with my demands? Dr. My husband's brother who I have a toxic history with sent me a dick pic and I am fighting with my husband about whether or not to go meet his parents and his brother for the holidays. Update. To start, I want to preface this by stating that I did not want to write an update on this. When I wrote the first post I got angry at the first couple of comments that came in because of their drastic unrealistic nature. No, I am not going to divorce my husband because he won't stick up for me. Nobody is perfect including me, but a lot of the comments I felt didn't understand the whole scope of the problem, and I feel that is on me for not writing everything I should have. But, some of it was helpful and I will address that later. Things I should have addressed or mentioned in the first post I will put here. First, my husband is adopted and so is Brian. Because of this, there are a few things that changed their relationship. John was adopted at the age of 3 and does not remember anything other than his adoptive family. However, Brian was adopted at the age of 9 when John was 6. Brian is 6 feet 5 inches and John is 5 feet 10 inches, and Brian has been bigger than John all of his life. John has talked about how Brian was sexually abused before he was adopted, and that is a reason why his mother and father have always held back. Brian has bullied, and I do not mean in the older brother sense, John. John does not talk about it much, but I get the feeling Brian has done some fucked up shit to him. With that being said, after I calmed down from the first few comments the next day, I came back to the post to see it had somewhat exploded. I read through comments all day at work and wrote down some of the ones I needed to listen to. After I got home from work, I and John talked for a long time, and then the next night and the night after that. What I discussed with him was the stress his family has put on me. He by no means agrees with what his parents are doing or anything Brian has done. He opened up and did say that he felt he was failing a bit. He teared up for a bit when he told me that he wished that he had done more about Brian at the wedding and that he does not expect me to come with him to his family's ever again. He is a very shy guy and does not like conflict. He said that he would find a way for him to go just by himself for Thanksgiving and that he would just skip Christmas this year altogether. But an important thing I wanted, after reading the comments, was for him to explain to his mother exactly why I was not coming. I do not want Brian to get away with this and to expect me to be totally passive in the situation. John the first night was hesitant, to say the least, about the idea. He was afraid of many things about if he did that. But the second night, after thinking about it at work, he decided that is was the right thing to do. He is planning to talk to his mother next week, but some of the comments did alarm me about my behavior. One comment said I might have some codependency and other comments said I should go to couples counseling. When I brought the idea up to John, he surprised me by saying that he would like to go to couples counseling. John said he would research it and has scheduled a session for us next week before he calls his mother. I am very relieved and have felt much better. I think talking with John really helped and has assured me that John and I are on the same page. That is all I can say, and I know that there is interest in my situation, and while I do not like for my life to be opened and read like a book, I think it did help me understand myself more. Stories number 6. My wife is convinced that I will cheat on her because she's pregnant. Long story short, my father cheated on my mother with my stepmother. My wife, in our 7-year relationship, for dating, 3 married, has never met my father, stepmother, half-siblings, step-uncles, or my step-grandfather. My mother convinced my wife she didn't want any of them at the wedding or have any holidays with them the entirety of our relationship. My wife was cheated on in the past but moved past that, or so I thought. Well, my wife and I recently found out we're having our first child, but my wife is not excited or happy at all because my mother told her that my father cheated on my mother once she got pregnant. Yes, accurate, but it was before either of my parents knew my mother was pregnant with me. My wife is convinced that I'll cheat on her because she's pregnant. Very unlikely, as she's the most amazing woman I've met and no one can hold a candle to her on looks. My mother just says I'm my father's son, which really pissing me off. But because my wife hasn't met my father, she says that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. She does trust me, she says she trusts me, but she cries every time my phone goes off. My stepmother, who I call Mama, says to not vilify my mother and be a supportive husband to my wife as I can be. She even bought me some stuff to pamper my wife with because she deserves to be loved and pampered like the beautiful woman she is, and how pregnancy is tough on women's bodies. I trusted the woman who was pregnant 3 times, once with twins. So, besides the obvious, how can I get my wife to calm down and enjoy her pregnancy? Or convince her that I will not cheat on her? I love my wife, she makes me whole, there will never be anyone but her. Edit, to add, my father and stepmother owned up to what they did to me years ago. They always apologize to my mother whenever they see her because she constantly brings to up. I'm almost 30, but my mother will not stop making jabs at my father about my stepmother. I'll see what I can do about that. Edit 2. Okay, message taken. Separate my wife and mother, currently looking for therapists, and going to break out a couple face masks so my wife will be in a good mood when I talk to her. Maybe give her a massage. But I need to talk to her and cut contact with my mom. Update. Okay, thank you to everyone who responded to my post. Me and my wife are grateful and hopefully my head is firmly out of my ass. Firstly, my wife has joined an online book club with a lovely group of women who I have met. She's made friends, she's enjoying their book, the majority of them are moms so they have plenty to talk about. With permission from my boss I changed my work hours so we could spend more time together and we've been talking a lot. She is much happier and she's been talking to a therapist and me about her insecurities. It's a work in progress but that is life, and our baby is developing very well due to reduced maternal stress. Secondly, I now call my stepmother by her first name. I don't call her mama anymore. She wasn't upset at all. My wife has met my grandfather, SM's dad, and my uncles, SM's brothers. They got along real well. Especially since I got a pie to the face and they all laughed at me. Fair. I'm under the impression it was my grandfather's idea, but as long as she is happy. Her laughter is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. My mother was told therapy or no contact. I was told she wasn't going because there wasn't a goddamn thing wrong with her. Her husband and daughters, my awesome sisters, are going to keep trying. My mother and wife have been out of contact since. My wife is a little upset but because of this she's made new friends that when the world is better she can meet in person and they can dish on their husbands out of earshot. Kidding. Then someone in my DMs got into my head about the paternity about my half-siblings, if they really are my fathers or not. So, I talked to my family about genealogy and learning about where our family came from. One of my uncles suggested we just make our own episode of Maury. Stepmother said it would be pretty boring but whatever if that's what we want to spend our money and time on. Yes, my family is a little weird. So all us kids took tests. My sisters didn't want me to be left out. I mean, I had the test as a baby, no true surprises. 4 out of 5 kids matched. The one that didn't, me. The one kid my dad was sure about. Several tests later, they all agree. My dad isn't my biological father. Dad's upset, I'm upset. I haven't told my wife because I don't know how to really say it without sounding like a crazy person. And I still have emotions about the results myself. Me and my twin half-siblings could be triplets. I don't understand. I'm a little lost here. I'm overwhelmed. If anyone has anything for me I'd greatly appreciate it. I'd love to ask my mother about this fun revelation but she's not getting anything from me until she goes to therapy. My stepfather and sisters wouldn't know anything about it. So, if anyone has advice, I'm open to hearing it. Relevant comments. Commenters 1. Well, I didn't expect that. Do all your siblings know as well? What was the reaction? I think the first step is to reaffirm the relationships you have in your life. Your dad, he is your dad in every way that matters. Your siblings too. You didn't ask for any of this and had no control over any of it. But you still have the same loving family you had before the test. Best of luck with everything. And take your time. Reply. Luckily my uncle playing the part of Maury pulled me and my dad aside before he read it out loud. It worried the hell out of the rest of my family that was there. But once we told everyone there was an upset. No anger, some tears, back-breaking hugs. My younger sister was the one to question if it was a fluke so Dad and I did the other tests. Not a fluke or way too many flukes. I was told my seat at the table isn't going anywhere, if anything it's going to get a pillow. Update 2, my mother is confronted with my paternity results and it goes as well as expected. I wasn't expecting to make a trilogy out of this, I was just expecting some advice to help me with my wife. But thank you to everyone who has been helpful. I shall continue my epic. Before I begin my dad and I went through with a paternity test through a doctor, no change. And, well, I did a genealogy kit and made the results public so I could try to find my father that way and sadly nothing yet on that front. My wife has met my whole family, it's amazing and she's talking about us renewing our vows so they could be there that time. Baby and virus permitting. I do like the idea. And my wife apologized to me about the hurtful things she said and the way she behaved, and even offered to have them paternity test our baby with a promise for the most boring paternity result ever. I.e. the baby being mine. I trust my wife, we're a team, and I love her. There will never be another person for me. I will take her up on her offer but it's not because I think it will expose something, and I've told her just that. My stepfather reportedly gave my mother my paternity results. He told me she screamed that BTCH. I believe that is a reference to my stepmother. She claims my stepmother tampered with the results, of all the tests us kids took, to make my mother look bad because, and I quote, that skank couldn't close her legs for a cold breeze, she'll FCK everything that moves. Things were thrown, and a lot of other things were screamed about my dad and stepmother. She is in definitely no contact with me or my wife. Her daughter, my half-sister, has been removed and is living with my stepfather's parents until her paternity results come back. My other sister is my stepsister, she's safe. Oh, and Mama, my loving stepmother, has busted the evil stepmother myth for my darling wife. Their relationship is relatively new, but those two, plus my two sisters, dad's girls, and my other two sisters have teased starting their own book club while they wait for baby to arrive. Or the world to right itself, whichever comes first. So, I think I'm okay. It's not perfect, not a fairy tale, but maybe an update when my sister's results come in, or if I get a hit on my genes, or I can leave you all in suspense. I can stop using this account and bothering the poor people on this subreddit. But when my boy is born, it will be hard not to tell you all about it. I don't know how to link my past posts as I'm on mobile, so I do apologize. But if anyone has any true further advice to offer me, I will be thankful for anything. Update 3. Okay, so I wanted to start my update with the happy news, but I thought I should start with the title because I am, well, furious. My wife was with my dad's family because my mother tried breaking into our house. So my mother found out my wife was staying there and basically tried to do the same. When she broke into my house, I did call the police, but they let her go with a warning. Even after I tried to press charges. She's your mom, you don't want to do that to her. Mother busted in a living room window to be confronted by stepmother. Mother busted stepmother over the head with my grandmother's urn. Dad called the cops, but not before my grandpa punched my mother. Mother and grandpa were arrested and taken to the station before I got there. Dad and one of my brothers went with stepmother while my sisters were consoling my wife until I got there. I immediately took my wife to her mother's house and stayed there while my uncles freed grandpa, who was having a grand old time since it reminded him of his military days, and he loved his military days. My stepmother is recovering, but given she's not that young anymore, it may take her some time to fully recover. Dad and I are pressing charges on my mother. Every charge we can get because I'm done. Anyway. I found my biological father's family. A wife and two sons. I have two half-brothers who were very surprised I existed. My father passed suddenly 3 years ago, so all that I have is his wife and sons. And I apparently look just like him. I'll never truly know his side of the story, but I know that he married his wife when I was 4 years old and his wife has no idea who my mother is. They're very nice people who can't wait for all of us to meet in person. My little sister's paternity results haven't come back yet, that I know of. She's very busy these days. My wife has assured me that her and the baby are okay. I am just unbelievably angry at my mother right now. So if anyone has anything they can give me, I'd appreciate it. Relevant comments. Commenters 1. Grandpa sounds awesome. Reply. They gave me a bed, uncle's name. And it was off the ground. I'd never had it so good when I was in the army. Not now, Dad. My uncle said this was said as they were leaving the police station. Commenters 2. Grandpa didn't deserve to be arrested. Grandpa deserved a goddamn medal. Reply. He says his daughter being home from the hospital will be reward enough. And his family being safe. We're chipping together to get my grandmother's urn, his wife, by the way, replaced since it received damage. Stories number 7. I had a baby as a result of an affair and now his wife is reaching out to me. I, F, 26, had an affair with a married man, M, 42, a few years ago. I had no clue he was married when we first met and hooked up. I obviously looked him up on social media, and while he did have photos of his kids on there, there was absolutely no mention or photos of a wife at all. I found out that he was married about a month after we first got together, but he told me it was just a marriage on paper and that they basically lived separate lives and agreed to remain married for practical purposes until the kids were older. They owned a business, which she really ran, and he was just financially involved in. I knew at the time that I probably shouldn't believe him, but I convinced myself it was true. I was in my early 20s and so attracted to him and I guess almost infatuated with him. He made me feel so good. I know now that I should have ended it immediately, but I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. I was addicted to all of the attention he gave me, the great sex, the places he'd take me. I felt special. I was so naive. I got pregnant about a year into seeing him. I had always been so careful with preventing pregnancy, but during my relationship with him I took stupid risks. I was so high in lust with this guy, it's embarrassing. The things he'd ask me to do, I'd say yes to almost anything, even when I knew it was a bad idea. I was in love with him, or I thought I was. I hadn't intentionally wanted to get pregnant. I would of course dream about being his wife and having a family, but I knew that wouldn't be a possibility while he had this arrangement with his actual wife. I didn't get pregnant on purpose with any intention of him leaving her for me, even if I wished that we could be a real, normal couple. I was surprised by how excited I was to be pregnant with his baby. I wanted that baby once I found out I was pregnant. The thought of carrying this baby of the man I loved was so special to me, but I knew he probably wouldn't feel the same. I told him I was pregnant and he told me I couldn't keep the baby. I expected his reaction, but I was devastated and it hurt me to my core that he didn't feel the same way I did. He offered to pay, to make a whole weekend of it somewhere exciting, WTF, and to buy me something special if I just please get rid of the baby. He explained that he didn't want any more kids and that he couldn't openly be a father to another kid when he and his wife were still pretending to be happily married to the outside world. I agreed to do what he wanted and we made plans for him to pick me up and find somewhere out of town to go get it done. I was all packed the night he was going to pick me up, but I started to feel really scared and really unsafe about the whole thing. I took my bag and checked myself into a hotel to hide because I couldn't go with him. I texted him to say I promised to never contact him again and to never name him as the father or go after child support if he promised to leave me alone. At first he tried to sweet-talk me into doing what he wanted. When I didn't cave in, he said some very nasty things to me and that I essentially better never contact him again or show up at his door. I have a 2-year-old now. At times, it's been difficult, but overall we are thriving as best we can. I have kept my word about not naming his as the father or requesting child support. His wife contacted me on social media. Well, she's his ex-wife now. She wants to talk to me. She found out about me and told me that she divorced him 6 months ago. She wants her children to know their sibling and for my child to know his siblings. That's weird to me. I haven't responded back to her yet. I am unsure about how to approach this. How do I respond to this? I wonder if I'm being selfish by not exploring an option for my child to know his siblings, if she's being genuine about that. If I was married and my husband fathered a child outside of our marriage, I don't think I'd feel the same that she does. Update 1. I made a post 3 weeks ago and things have only gotten stranger. I had an affair with a married man a few years ago. I regret it and I will never do anything like that ever again. I knew it was wrong from the very beginning, but he captivated me. I was naive. I allowed myself to believe when he told me they were pretty much just married on paper for the sake of their kids. I got pregnant and while he tried to talk me into getting an abortion, I ultimately decided to keep the baby. I have a 2-year-old little boy now. I promised this man that I wouldn't expose our affair and I wouldn't formally identify him as the father or request child support. I did that because he was becoming very nasty about the whole thing and I felt like due to the mess that I had created and the way I felt by the end of it, a clean break with no involvement with him would be the best thing for everyone. I moved back to where my family is, hundreds of miles from where he and his family live. About a month ago his ex-wife reached out to me via social media, claiming they had been divorced for 6 months and that she wanted our children to be able to know each other. Now, their kids are teenagers, so I didn't really think they'd want anything to do with the toddler and the woman their father was having an affair with. It seemed odd to me. After posting here, I sort of decided that I wouldn't respond to her. I'd just ignore it. She just sent me the one message, so it wasn't as if she was badgering me about talking to me or meeting me. On Friday night I decided to message her. I don't really know why. I think it was really just for my sake so I could have the chance to apologize to her. I told her that I would be more comfortable speaking with her face to face since I couldn't trust that it was really her. She said she understood. I was too nervous to meet her in person, but we did a video chat. I didn't know what to expect, if this was all a ploy just to unleash her fury on me or what. I mean, I deserve that. She wouldn't be wrong to feel that way. It was really her. She told me she discovered our affair when she found communications between the two of us, after our relationship had ended. She told me I'm one of many women he had affairs with over the years and she knew about somebody even before he met me, but she didn't divorce him at the time. Finding out about my child was the final straw for her. I told her I was sorry for my relationship with her husband and admitted that I knew he was married. She graciously told me she forgives me and that while she harbored a lot of anger towards me initially, she ultimately blames her husband. I'm not blameless, but she chooses to not hate me, essentially. She said she couldn't have said this 6 months ago or a year ago when she first found out about me, but she has moved past that. She still has anger toward him, in addition to many other emotions surrounding him. She started pouring out her heart to me about their 20-plus-year marriage and life together and it was very awkward because what do I even say? Her kids know about me and my son. She says they're very mad at their father. Somehow I don't think they're mad about the fact that he's not involved with my son's life. And why would they be mad about that? I would hate me if I were them. I told her with my son being so little right now, I don't really feel comfortable with him meeting her kids or being involved with their family. I feel unsure about it and it's just not something I feel needs to happen right now. Then she told me her ex-husband was in a bad accident 2 months ago. He's fine now, still not allowed to return to all his normal activities just yet, but will be fine. He is probably the most physically active person I've ever met, barely ever seems to sit down, so he must be terribly annoying to be around if he's not allowed to go all the time. She told me he wants to meet my son. Apparently she moved back in with him temporarily when he first came home from the hospital. She said the accident really shook him up and he has been expressing a lot of regret about my son, not being involved, not providing for him. So now it's like was everything she said just a lie and he somehow got her to reach out to me on his behalf. And she actually did it? It felt almost like a relief talking to her initially, but then it's like was any of that true or you were just trying to be his messenger? I don't even know if that part is true now. Why wouldn't he just contact me himself? I'm just feeling so uneasy about the whole thing now. Update 2. I posted about this few months ago. To summarize very quickly, when I was fresh out of college I had an affair with a married man and father. I became pregnant. He wanted me to get an abortion. He had arranged to take me away, in a vacation, to get an abortion. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do but I agreed to go along with what we wanted. At the last minute, when he was on his way to come pick me up, I told him I couldn't go through with the abortion. I just really didn't feel comfortable about his plan and how he was orchestrating everything. It scared me. I realized at that time how deep I had gone with this mistake, how screwed up the whole relationship was. He was really mad. He threatened me, said a lot of nasty things to me. I told him if he just left me alone and let me have my baby then I'd leave him alone and wouldn't name him as the father or seek child support. I moved back home. I was living in a different state when I met him. I kept my word and I did name him as the father or seek to establish paternity. I have never sought child support. My child is 2 now. A few months ago his wife contacted me via social media. At first she made it seem like she wanted my child to have the opportunity to know his siblings. It was sort of weird since the siblings are teenagers. She said she had divorced him 6 months prior. I agreed to talk to her virtually, not in person. I felt that I owed it to her to apologize for what I had done. I do feel bad about it. But at the end of the conversation I told her that I didn't feel it was the appropriate time to connect my son with her kids. He's a toddler in their teens, plus I had promised her husband to stay out of his life. That's when she told me that he was recently in a bad accident and she had been helping to take care of him. Supposedly he was going to be fine and was fairly recovered at that point, but she said he had expressed interest to meet our child, so she was basically his messenger. I have not been in contact with her since then. I deleted my social media. I don't know why, but the whole thing just really made me uncomfortable. Since I last posted here, then, I received a handwritten letter from him. In it, he expressed how he wanted to get to know our son, he wants to be a father to our son, he wants to provide financially for him, he'd like us to come visit him. He asked me to sign a paternity affidavit. I refused to do so. I know he is my son's father but I'm not going to make this that easy for him. After the things he said to me and threatened me with, he at least has to work for this. At that point, my parents felt that we needed to meet with a lawyer. All communication from me has gone through a lawyer. I have never responded to him personally/directly. Now, I have a court order for paternity. I have to present my son to have a specimen taken tomorrow. I already know what it's going to say. It's not that I don't want my son to have a dad in his life. It's just, the whole situation is a mess. And he lives a few states away from me. I don't know what to do. I can't really do anything. He's doing things legally. Next, I'm sure he'll petition for some form of custody or visitation. He's not married anymore, supposedly, but he's a lot more established than I am. He has considerably more financial resources. I also know he has all sorts of connections where he lives. Luckily they don't hold as much weight here in my state but it's still so scary to me. I'm a bad mom. I brought my son into this world knowing it was a messy situation. I just got so comfortable with it just being the 2 of us and now I don't want to give that up. Update 3. I won't rehash the whole thing here. My previous posts are on my profile. I got pregnant from an affair with a married guy. He wanted me to have an abortion. I decided I didn't want one. He turned mean. I promised to not name him as the father, legally, or to pursue any sort of child support. I moved away from where he and his family were located. I'm about 12 hours away from him now, back where my family is from. I haven't reached out to him in the now over 3 years since. His ex-wife reached out to me out of the blue via social media, initially claiming she wanted to connect with me so that our kids could know each other. When I politely declined for the time being, as her kids are teenagers and my son is a toddler and we live states apart, she revealed she was really reaching out in behalf of her ex-husband who had supposedly had a change of heart about being involved in our child's life after nearly dying in an accident. I did not engage with her any further after that. It all made me feel very uncomfortable. Later, I received a letter from him in the mail. He asked to be involved with our son, to provide for him, etc. It still felt weird. I mean, he turned really mean and didn't want anything to do with me or our baby and hadn't made any attempt to contact me in years, and I was not hiding. His wife was obviously able to find me on social media and you can find my address online. I felt like if he was serious, he'd take the steps to establish paternity legally. And that's what he did. Around 1.5 months ago we were ordered to submit DNA samples for a paternity test. It took around 5 weeks to find out what I already knew it'd say. But now things are stalled for another several weeks for the next step in the court process. I haven't talked to him at all during this whole thing. I didn't respond directly to his letter. I do have a lawyer and everything is basically going through him now. Then without any warning, he just showed up at my home last weekend. Just knocked on the door like it was nothing. Basically, this is his son and he doesn't want to wait another 6 weeks for the court to inevitably order us into some sort of custody mediation anyway, his words. Why can't I just talk to him? I told him he made me uncomfortable and him just showing up at my house really made me uncomfortable. Honestly, I don't know what made me so uncomfortable. The fact that he showed up unannounced like that or the fact that I instantly felt the same attraction to him that I had when I was with him and I didn't want to feel that at all. In some weird way part of me felt happy to see him and then another part of me was disgusted that I was happy. He said he doesn't understand why we can't just talk about this. He's not trying to take my son away from me, he just wants to be involved in his life and to help provide for him like he should have been all along. He's sorry he wasn't there when he was born. He's sorry he reacted the way that he did when I didn't go along with his plans to take me on an abortion vacation. Why can't I believe that he just wants to be a dad to his kid? I guess I agree with him. Why can't I just accept that he has had a change of heart? I can't trust myself. I can't trust my own judgment. I feel like if I easily let him into my son's life I'm going to end up regretting it and be made a fool of somehow. I've already made so many mistakes when it comes to him. He says it's stupid of me to not try to work it out amongst ourselves first. I'm giving so much control to the court. I don't know whether to believe that or to think it's just his way of convincing me to do what he wants. I know he will get some sort of visitation and eventual custody. Maybe it would be better if we try to come to an agreement, but he had the ability to sway me so easily. I'm so stupid when it comes to him. Nobody else has ever made me feel so foolish in my life. I want my son to have a dad. I admit it's probably selfish of me to want to keep him away. I just keep imagining having to spend weeks or months apart from my child while he's living with his dad 12 hours away and I can't stand the thought of it. I'm just feeling sad, stupid, and defeated. Update 4. Since everyone got mad at me for posting a recap of my situation in my previous posts, I won't even go there. If you're interested in the backstory, you can read my previous posts. All I will say is that I have a 3-year-old son who was conceived with an affair I had with a married man. After initially making me promise to not contact him, to not name him as the father, and to not request child support, my child's father has been pursuing involvement in our son's life over the last several months. He lived states away and most recently he showed up at my house to try to convince me to work things out directly with him. Since the last time I posted, we've recently had a mediation session and he's met our son twice. At this time, he will have supervised visitation, with me present. Because he lives states away, he is required to come here to see our son. It will not be on a weekly basis due to the travel. He will see him during 2 weeks of the month, 2 times each week, for a total of 4 visits a month plus 2 video calls a month. This will last for 6 months. The next step will be for him to continue that schedule, but to have unsupervised visitation during which he cannot remove him from the area, for another 6 months. After a year, we agree to have another mediation session to determine next steps, with the goal, his goal, of being able to have my son at his home for short overnights. I'm not even ready to discuss that. He's already suggesting I can come for the first few times. I don't like the sound of it at all. We also have the option to request another mediation before 1 year and something tells me he's going to pull that. I also have an order for child support. While he is in agreement with paying child support, it will have to work through the court system before becoming official and for me to start getting the regular payment. He wrote me a large check in the meantime. I was hesitant to accept it. Not that I don't think my son deserves it, but now I'm just always worried I'll say or do the wrong thing legally, completely unknowingly, and shoot myself in the foot. Like, am I obligated myself and my son to anything by accepting this check? Can he somehow spin this against me? Of course he was not in favor of the 6-month/6-month plan, and while he does understand that my son should not just go off with a stranger upon first meeting him, he wishes we could speed it along a little more, but 6 months was what we were able to agree on. He wanted to fly us both to where he lived so he could spend a week or 2 getting to know our son, but I don't feel that's appropriate at this time. Perhaps in a few months, or around the holidays, depending on how things are going. It would be too much too soon. The initial 2 meetings went pretty much just as I thought they would. My son is extremely shy. He wanted to hide behind me most of the time. Then when he would venture out from behind me, as soon as his dad would say anything to him, he would scurry back behind me and just stare at his dad blankly without saying anything. He came out of his shell a little bit, however he has still not said a single word to his dad. He just pretends like his dad isn't there and only talks to me. I will say that his dad is being patient and understanding as far as that goes. If he's frustrated, he's not showing it. He did suggest that maybe our son needs to get out more, go to daycare more of even preschool instead of spending so much time with me and my parents. He's very delighted with how much our son looks like him and how much he favors him over me. The one thing that did bother me is that I already told him I wanted to be very careful and mindful of how we informed our son, this little barely 3-year-old boy, that this man/complete stranger is his dad. He said, sure, yeah. Then at the first meeting he introduced himself as dad. Since then I've been trying to help my son understand. Like, you know how your grandpa is my daddy, this guy is your daddy. It's so surreal to me that any of this is happening. I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm waiting for something to blow up in my face. Now, it's just working on accepting our new reality. All of this change is hard and confusing for my son, and it's hard for me. Unless he really fucks up, I'm looking at eventually shared times with my son, spending school breaks and holidays at his dad's house, hours and hours away in another state. It won't happen tomorrow, but it will happen in the most likely reality. I just hope he stays committed. If he can be a good dad to my child, then my child deserves that, no matter how sad sharing him makes me. If he breaks my son's heart, that'll be another story, and I won't accept that so readily. Update 5. It's been 3 weeks since I last posted, and just over a month since our new visitation arrangements started. I've seen plenty of people here talking about how dumb I am. I don't really understand. What am I doing that's so dumb? I know it was dumb to have an ongoing, year-long affair with a married man. It was stupid to put myself in a position where I could likely end up pregnant. That was in the past. What am I doing now that's so stupid? I have a lawyer. Yes, I agreed to talk to his wife one time. How was I to know she was just doing his bidding? Who would have thought that was the case? It's not even like I went to meet her in person somewhere. It was just a video call. I figured I at least owed that to her. Just one time, and a chance to tell her I was sorry for what I did. But ultimately it felt off, and I protected my son by telling her I didn't think it was appropriate at this time for me and my 2-year-old to travel to another state to meet her teenage kids. It's not as if talking to her opened the door for him to reach out to me. I was careful with what info I shared with her. It's not as if I told her my address. He didn't need her to gather that info from me. Me talking to her isn't what prompted him to contact me directly and establish paternity. When he reached out to me directly about wanting to be involved with our son, I didn't reach out to him and decide to discuss things directly with him. I got a lawyer. When he showed up at my house, I didn't let him inside. I put my son in his room, so he didn't eventually see our son or have access to him. I'm listening to my lawyer. I met with him in a mediation, and I am trying to make careful decisions for my son. There is nothing I can do to prevent him from having access to our son. The court will grant him access if I fight it. At least this way I have a say in the arrangement. We are supposed to be using a parenting app. Since the last time I posted, he's reached out to me outside of the app. Now, he keeps talking about us coming there to visit him. I have told him no. It's not appropriate. It's too much too soon. He's also already started talking about changing my son's last name to his, but you know, maybe in a year or so. He tries to have personal conversations with me, not always about our son. I have shut those down and referred him back to the parenting app. He thinks using the app is stupid and is only for people who can't get along. He thinks it'd be better for our son if we got along and got to know each other again. He cares about me and what's going on in my life, or so he says. I also didn't cash the check he gave me. I returned it. If he wants to help financially beyond the child support he's ordered to pay, he can purchase items that our son needs out of his own free will, but he isn't to give me cash or checks. My lawyer actually told me that there was nothing wrong with accepting and cashing the check. It wouldn't affect anything related to child support. But knowing him, he could be using this check as something he can bring up later in court, and I just didn't feel comfortable about it. Sure, I would have loved to have kept it. There are quite a few useful things I could have used that money for. Of course he was upset when I returned the check, via certified mail. His plan was foiled. I know he's trying to butter me up for something. I don't know precisely what, but I'm not that stupid that I don't see through him now. Update 6. I'm not allowed to post more updates and true off my chest, so I'm posting this to my profile. Not sure if anyone will even see it. I think somebody reposted my story somewhere else because I suddenly started receiving messages about an update nearly 2 months since I last posted. It's been 2 more months of this. 2 months of him sending me messages, half about our son, half about everything else. Despite the parenting app, he just can't seem to stick to it. Every other day, I get a text directly from him, "How's our son?" followed by, "You good though? Need anything?" He's also started sending packages for our son. The last one came a few days ago, a big box of toys, books, and clothes. At first, I didn't know what to think. Was this another tactic? But then I looked at the stuff he sent. It was thoughtful, age-appropriate books, clothes that actually fit, and toys my son genuinely liked. It was clear he put effort into it. Or, the person he had go buy the stuff put effort into it. Hopefully not this poor ex-wife. For a moment, I could see him trying to be a father. A small part of me appreciated that. Still, I'm careful. I'm not letting my guard down. The good gestures are mixed with moments that make me feel uneasy. He mentioned, again, that, maybe in a year or so, we should talk about changing my son's last name. I don't know why he keeps bringing it up. He acts like it's no big deal, like it's just something we'll agree on eventually. On the other hand, I can't deny that having him show up consistently with child support and gifts has taken some pressure off me. He's contributing in ways that actually help. My son seems happy with the things he's sent. And while I don't want to rely on it, it's nice not to worry about buying new clothes every month. The biggest challenge right now is finding balance. How do I acknowledge the good things he's doing without letting my guard down too much? How do I protect my son from getting hurt if he loses interest or starts pushing too hard again? I'm still following my lawyer's advice, still documenting everything, but the dynamic is changing, and I'm trying to keep up. For now, I'm taking things day by day. Some moments feel peaceful, like maybe this arrangement could work. Other moments, I feel the weight of what's coming. He'll keep pushing for more time, for overnights, for a bigger role. He thinks it's unfair if I don't let him spend more time with our son during the holidays. He was practically throwing a temper tantrum about it. If I won't go to him, then he can rent an Airbnb and we can stay together. What? Why would we do that? He'll see him in December during his regularly scheduled visit. So then he called me a narcissistic, paranoid parent who just wants our son all to myself and that I'm psychologically damaging him by not forcing him to go 0 to 60 playing happy family with a completely stranger overnight. The thing is, he has a way of saying it that makes me start to believe it, and then I'm worrying if I'm really being that way. I don't know why he can't just act like a normal, patient, understanding adult person. I'm cooperating and I know their level of contact and time will increase gradually. That's the key word, gradually. I'm not even trying to prevent that, but I just can't agree with this idea he has of just acting like he hasn't been completely uninvolved for almost 3 years. He's also trying to bribe me with money again. I'm not talking about the court-ordered child support and things like that. He asked me how much debt I had and I wouldn't tell him. He kept pushing me to tell him, because he would consider paying it off for me. Come on, let me help you. It's not help out if the kindness of his heart. He says there aren't strings attached, but I'm sure there are. He'll expect something in return, like for me to agree to change our son's name and allow some sort of custody arrangement I'm uncomfortable with. I do have a lot of debt that's a huge stressor on me, and yes, I've considered taking advantage of his offer, but not when I know my son is the price I have to pay. He told me he can find out how much debt I have if I don't tell him, and that he knows a lot more about me than I realize. I hope that's just him trying to intimidate me. It sounds like it's mostly just talk and something stupid he'd say. He is sounding more and more like his old self though. So much for this accident really changing him for the better. He's really had me fooled at moments. At the end of the day, it's not money or fancy things that would go a long way with me. It's things like a genuine apologize for threatening to kill me, little things like that which go completely ignored and swept under the rug that would mean much more to me, but only if it was completely genuine. New update. I'm just posting a quick update because several people have reached out and expressed concern for me and my safety. I'm fine. My son is fine. I appreciate that people were concerned. There just hasn't been much change or reason to post an update since my last one, until very recently. We continue to follow the same visitation schedule with my son's father traveling here to visit. He hasn't missed a visit, pays child support as ordered, and other than his pushiness things are going okay. My son is a lot more comfortable with him now and doesn't hide behind me or stay silent the entire time, but I think it's hard for him to grasp the concept of this guy being his dad. He's just a nice guy who plays with him and brings him toys a few times a month. Last weekend was one of his visitation weekends and he bought tickets for a Polar Express train ride. I had planned to do that when my son was maybe 4 or 5. I think 3 is a little young, but of course he'd already bought the tickets. The 3 of us went. I don't really feel threatened by him, but I also don't feel comfortable letting him take my son somewhere alone yet. I didn't have the best attitude going into it. I felt like I was kind of going against my will. We stayed in a nice hotel that was decked out for Christmas and part of a Poker Express package. I was worried he'd expect us all to share a room, but he got us separate rooms. The train ride was fun and my son enjoyed it. I don't know that he cared about Santa, but he liked the cocoa, the jingle bell, and the pancake breakfast the next morning. He got cranky towards the end of the train ride, but overall it was okay and I got a ton of really great pictures I'll treasure forever. Everything was going fine. It was a totally tolerable experience being there with my son's father. I wasn't focused on him. I was sort of able to ignore his presence to a degree. Then after we got back from the train ride he said he loved me and he'd give anything to be sleeping in the same bed as me that night. I told him I didn't want to talk about that it'd ruin the entire weekend, and that we wouldn't be sleeping in the same bed. He said he doesn't understand why I'm so resistant to him. I guess he thinks I can just easily forget the way he treated me and our son when I told him I wasn't going to get an abortion. I told him I can't get over what he said and did to me and he said, I didn't mean it, that was years ago. I refused to talk about it anymore, but I couldn't resist asking him why he's doing all of this. I still don't understand why he decided to re-enter our lives. I do buy that he suddenly had a totally non-selfish change of heart after he was in his accident. He said he just wants to be there for his son and I should be happy for our son to have a father. He also said he can give him so much and I selfishly want to prevent that because of my pride. He thinks the reason I won't be with him again is because I'm stubborn and insist on resisting everything he could do to make my life better and happier. So, the whole thing just ended in a sour note. We won't see him again until January. He has really tried to talk to me since then. He has short, scheduled video calls with my son and he usually tries to get me to talk to him but he basically ignored me. I may just have my dad take my son for the next few visits. I know my dad won't want to spend any time with my ex and my ex definitely won't want to spend time with my dad, but I think it'd probably be for the best and would send a clear message. Top comment. Commenter, thank you for the update. Here's what I think, he is a charismatic man used to having what he wanted. He wanted you and his other life not disrupted. The day he threatened you. Was it a married man D-Day syndrome? He was triggered by your pregnancy. The mask slipped, he would have said anything to get you in line, to keep his perfect world intact. He was in a laser-focused damage control, protect the bubble mode. What I don't know about him, would it have escalated from just say anything to do anything, meaning physical harm, I don't know. If the threats were to get over the immediate problem for him and in his mind knows they were words with no intention to actually harm but used just to get you in the car, they will seem like no big deal to him, especially years later, and since he lost his marriage anyway they'd mean even less to him. But my concern has always been even in best case scenario if that's true, people move on and I believe he has one, or more, women in his life now. So, is the interest in a physical relationship with you now genuine chemistry and residual from before or a first step in getting you, and more importantly his son, back to his state and his state's court system where he has contacts to out-lawyer you and keep your son in his state? When you are with him, are your feelings still there? I guess my advice would really depend on how you feel about him. We are all Team River and Little Man. Stories number 8. AIO for getting a paternity test after my wife laughed when I talked about my son. So, long story short, after finishing my chemotherapy I had my semen analysis done and the doctors told me I was pretty much infertile due to the results and it would take at least 2 years to see any difference in my results. 2 months after I got this news my wife got pregnant. So, I know what you might be thinking, but honestly I work from home and she hardly speaks any English, and doesn't have any means of transporting herself as she has no income of her own etc. So I really doubt this child is not mine, but something really stuck to me recently after our son was born. It was the fact that as my grandmother was telling me that my son looks a lot like me, my wife laughed and said, very convincing. I'm not sure why she would say something like that to my grandmother, but I just had to get a peace of mind paternity test the next day, still waiting for results. Am I overreacting? Edit. My grandmother and I also speak her language. She's very close to my grandmother and before I brought her to the UK she would always tell my grandmother she suspected I was cheating on her whilst I was on my own here. Also, I have a hot, younger brother involved who she was staying with before she moved here and who was staying with us during the time she got pregnant. Even though I work from home, I still have to be in the office once a week. I had her consent for the paternity test. Stories number 9. Aita for calling my principal a hypocritical bitch. Today at school, I-17F had a severe allergic reaction. The cause is still unknown, but my body was fully broken out in hives and my throat was closing up along with a swollen tongue. I was sent to the office where my vice principal 30-ish M was trying to comfort me, because I was starting to panic. He called out for an EpiPen and I heard my principal 40-ish F in the distance laughing about it to another teacher saying, "This is so funny, why is she being so dramatic?" Once an ambulance came and I was given an EpiPen shot, I called her a hypocritical bitch on my way out to the ER. She constantly goes around the school preaching safety and kindness but laughed when I was having a serious medical issue. Now, she's upset and trying to get me in trouble, but the vice principal told me not to worry and just tell my side. This was my first time having an allergic reaction ever, so I was very confused and panicky. Stories number 10. Aita for letting my adopted niece call me daddy. I, 28M, adopted my niece, 6F, 3 years ago after my brother lost custody. He was going through a lot, including substance abuse, legal issues, and an unstable living situation, and it became clear he couldn't provide the care she needed. I stepped up to adopt her because I didn't want her ending up in the foster care system. At the time, my niece was just 3, and the transition was tough for her. Over time, she started calling me daddy on her own. I never told her to, but I also didn't correct her. I felt it was important for her to feel safe and secure, and if calling me daddy gave her that comfort, I wasn't going to take it away. My brother recently got back in touch after cleaning up his life. While I'm glad he's doing better, he's furious that my niece calls me daddy. He says I'm trying to erase him and that I'm confusing her about who her real father is. I tried explaining that it wasn't something I encouraged, but he insists I should make her stop. I don't feel comfortable forcing her to call me something else, especially when daddy is what she associates with the person who takes care of her. I've told her about her biological father in an age-appropriate way and plan to continue being honest as she grows up, but right now, I feel like her emotional well-being comes first. My brother has been ranting to other family members, and now some of them think I'm in the wrong for letting this happen. Others say I'm doing what's best for her. So, Aita for letting my adopted niece call me daddy. Stories number 11. Aita for not telling my siblings BF about our pedo brother. You'll need some background story, so I'll try to make it short. Keep in mind that I've told my sibling everything about the situation, so they know. I cut contact with my sibling because they refused to cut contact with our pedo brother. They kept posting pictures with him, smiling and stuff on social media. How do I know my brother's a pedo? Because he raped me 3 years in total, not every day, but many times. I was between the ages 10 to 13. Obviously it was very traumatic, and the sibling knows I've tried to kill myself specifically because of our brother. So this hurts my heart because I've done so much for my sibling. I've been there for them their whole life. Our pedo brother has done nothing more than traumatize me. He's not even that of a nice person. Now to the question. Should I tell the sibling's boyfriend about why I cut contact? He wrote to me in early 2024 telling me that my sibling cries and talks about me a lot, and he wishes that we could put our differences aside and start talk to each other again. Note that I've never, prior to this, spoke or ever seen their partner. I wrote back telling him that this is a complex situation and that the sibling knows what to do in order for me to forgive them. I'm starting to feel bad. The boyfriend has 3 kids, and because my sibling has normalized contact with my pedo brother, I feel bad for not warning the partner. The sibling will 100% meet our pedo brother with their partner and kids. I wouldn't be happy if I found out my partner brought me to pedophile. If I tell their partner, my family will cut contact with me, not my mom though. They will hate me for ruining my other sibling's life if the boyfriend decides to break up with them. So I literally don't know what to do. This situation makes me so stressed and it doesn't feel like real life. Aita for not telling him. Edit. Thank you all for reading and commenting. I'm sad that this has to be a situation. My sibling should obviously have cut contact with that disgusting pedo the second I told them. This shouldn't be a situation. I've tried telling the police about my pedo brother. There's no proof more than verbal proof and me having to go to therapy because of this. And of course he won't go and turn himself in because he's an ugly, stupid, coward and disgusting human being. Edit 2. I'm currently writing with my mom and we're trying to make a plan writing to him, or my mom will talk to him. We don't want to write to him when he's with my sibling because they can manipulate or gaslight him into thinking I'm the bad guy. There's a bigger chance that he will believe me if he gets the chance to think and process without my sibling being in the background saying, "No, don't believe him." And so on. Fuck, this situation is extremely draining and it genuinely makes me hate my life, and it makes me feel like this life is fucking useless. I shouldn't be in this fucked up situation. My sibling should have cut my pedo brother off the second I told them about the rape, period. My mom is and has been very stupid, like literally, she has an intellectual disability and she doesn't completely understand some situations and how serious they can be. But my sibling does. They have no disability, indicating that they have a hard time understanding situations like these. My mom freaking cut contact with our pedo brother but not them. I'm so happy my mom is trying to help me gather more information and she's going to help me tell/write to him. My sibling has, fortunately, not met the kids yet. My mom told me that yesterday. So the chance of them going to meet our pedo brother is small, but there's still a chance. It's not worth the risk. I'm going to have to take some mental break days. I'm genuinely so fucking exhausted mentally and emotionally. I'm going to update when I feel ready, but know that I am going to do something. Thank you. Edit 3. A lot of you are asking how old he was when he raped me. He's 10 years older than me, so he was between the ages of 20 to 23. He knew damn well not to rape a 10-year-old kid. Stories number 12. Whipped for exposing my girlfriend's best friend's paternity scheme. I 26M have been with my girlfriend, Becca 25F, for just over a year now. Becca and her best friend, Cindy 25F, are both also close friends with Mike 30M, who they met in their first year of college. Something about Mike always rubbed me the wrong way. He's polite enough, but I find he's too hand-sy with the girls. I brought it up to Becca, who says Mike is like a protective big brother to them. Since Mike has been Becca's friend since she was 18, her family love him, and invite him to family gatherings. That's why I keep quiet, since he's clearly important to Becca. At Becca's sister Bianca's engagement party, of course Mike was there. While Becca was talking to Bianca, I went outside for some air. It was cold out, so there were only 2 people vaping. At the side of the house I saw Mike and Cindy making out beside an in-the-ground solar light. I pulled out my phone and recorded 23 seconds of their makeout session before going back inside. On the car ride back, I told Becca that someone told me they saw Mike and Cindy kissing outside. She panicked and asked if I had told Stan what I was told. I said no and she was relieved. I asked, "You're not surprised?" She said, "Of course not. Mike and Cindy have been off and on for years." My mind reeled since Cindy had only been with Stan for 8 months. Becca said Mike understands Cindy in a way that Stan doesn't. And that she covers for Cindy and Mike because Stan sometimes gets suspicious, which is annoying. I lost some respect for Becca then. 2 weeks later, I'm at Becca's place and Cindy calls her. She answers the call on speaker and Cindy announces that she's pregnant. Becca squeals, takes the phone off speaker, and puts it to her ear. From my side, I got that Cindy was sure the baby was Mike's, but she plans to pass it off as Stan's. When Becca ended the call, I asked her why Cindy would lie to Stan about fathering a baby. Becca said that Mike makes more money than Stan. Side note, Mike owns 3 gyms and has a personal training business. Becca then says Mike wants a kid but doesn't want any responsibilities, or to deal with baby mama drama, so since Cindy and Stan will probably get married anyway, this made sense for everyone. I was horrified and told Becca that she's just as bad as Cindy for covering this up. We got into a fight, and I left. Later Becca calls and tells me that I'm being foolish for letting other people's drama affect our relationship. I thought we shared the same values, but that she is fine with lying about paternity, sets off alarm bells. I don't see a future, but don't know if breaking up over other people's drama is the right thing to do, and I feel for Stan, who doesn't deserve any of this. I feel too guilty not doing anything. So would I be the asshole if I somehow anonymously sent the video of Mike and Cindy making out to Stan? Update. Yesterday I posted about my GF Becca's best friend Cindy's plan to lie to Stan, Cindy's BF, about being the father of her unborn child and about Becca's role in going along with the plan and covering for Cindy. After reading the comments, I decided that the best thing was to confront Becca and tell her that either Cindy tells Stan the truth, or I will. Since today was Becca's day off work, I went to her apartment on my lunch break. Cindy was there, so I was able to tell Cindy directly. All hell broke loose. Cindy was crying, and Becca was just screaming and defending her friend. They both accused me and all men of being hypocrites since we have bro codes, but we punish women for loyalty. I left mid-screams. Later at work I was called to go down to the lobby because an irate man wants to see me. It was Mike, Cindy's off and on lover/friend, who is the real father of her unborn child. As soon as he saw me, Mike started yelling that I was a gossipy bitch for meddling in other people's lives, and what him, Cindy and Becca do is none of my business. He was escorted out and banned from the building by security. I barely got through work after that. I replayed what he said over and over. What me, Cindy and Becca do, what? Was he sleeping with both Becca and Cindy? Separately, or at the same time? Could they be some kind of throuple? I went down a rabbit hole and looked him up on social media, which wasn't hard since Becca tagged him in every pic. Turns out Mike is not 30 but 35 years old. That means he was 28 when he met Becca and Cindy at 18 years old. Could he have manipulated his way into their lives? Into their pants? Could he still be manipulating them now, years later? When I got home I got a call from a strange number but I didn't answer. Then that same number started sending me a bunch of texts. It was Stan saying just because I have outdated beliefs it was no excuse to slut-shame his pregnant GF. He's talking about my outdated belief that there would be nothing special about my wedding night if I have unprotected s*x before marriage and so I always use protection. I figured Becca told Cindy, since they share everything and for our 1-year anniversary Becca said we should stop using condoms since she was on birth control, but I refused. Stan was texting insults non-stop, so I sent him the video of Mike and Cindy making out. He finally took a 4-minute text break before texting, that was at Bianca's party. Stan was there and probably remembered their outfits. I texted back, yes. Then nothing for 17 minutes before he texted, thanks. 30 minutes later Becca started blowing up my phone. I turned it off, but I can hear alerts from my Apple Watch. I'm still reeling from what Mike said and plan to confront Becca about it. In the meantime I'm so mad I want to punch something. I'm so hurt I want to scream. I plan to take tomorrow off work to deal. Thanks to all who offered advice. If requested I'll update when I calm down and talk to Becca tomorrow. Stories number 13. I think I'm done with marriage. After Christmas I decided to go to my parents' house for some reflection and I think I'm done with my marriage. For some time I have looked at practical stuff such as where I could move and my economy but I hadn't really said anything out loud. But during my stay my parents picked up on something and I just let it all put. It was the first time I said it all out loud. I'm done feeling stupid. Done feeling like everything good in my life is pure luck. Done having my words twisted. Done with being gaslighted. Done with having someone play on my emotions to get their way. Done with being afraid of conflict. Right now I have a few days left until I go home. I can't sleep after saying all this out loud and crying for several hours. When I get home it will be even more real and I'm not sure if I can face it. 15 years is a long time and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it to be over even though I know I will feel better and it will get better. Stories number 14. Why does it bother me so much when my partners ask me not to cut my hair? I can't quite articulate why I am so bothered that every man I've dated asked me to not cut my hair or grow my hair out. I'm a woman who loves a chic bob, and has worn my hair that way for the better part of a decade. I'm currently wearing my hair longer due to preference of this season, and my partner is asking me to not cut my hair, despite voicing early on that I will have a bob again, it's just a matter of time. I'm trying to articulate why this bothers me so much. It's not that my partners are controlling, but why do they feel their preference about my body should overwrite mine? Why is this different than some other sacrifice one might make in a relationship? Stories number 15. Mother blames my daughter for getting us sick. I 33, am pregnant and asked my mother if anyone was sick. She told me no, so I went to my mother's house the Saturday before Christmas for dinner with my husband and 3 children. While we were there one of my older brothers told my husband, and future BIL, that he just got over the stomach bug. My husband and myself said goodbye to everyone as we left with our children. On Sunday our second child wasn't feeling right, she had the runs, we thought it was just the food she ate. Then Monday she started puking. My husband and I did everything right that by Tuesday she was feeling better. Then on Wednesday we hear our third child puking at 4:30 in the morning. I texted my mother and asked her who wasn't feeling well before our dinner. She gaslighted me and said my oldest daughter gave it to us and it's the stomach bug. I confronted her and told her that her son gave us the bug and now my kid is hospitalized. Shortly after we were discharged I started puking and then my oldest daughter started puking. My mother told my immediate family in the group chat that my family brought the stomach bug and to keep away from us. I texted the group chat that my older brother had it on Thursday before the dinner and my mother knew about it. I'm pissed because I'm a high-risk pregnancy and I couldn't eat nor drink fluids for 2 days. My husband is an angel taking care of 3 children while I rested. As soon as I got better he got sick. My mother texted me privately and said, well, at least you got this out before your baby is born. I went off and told her she's an a-hole because she knew that he was sick, and knowing I'm a high-risk pregnancy she allowed us to show up and then blamed my oldest child. My husband and I are going no contact with her. Stories number 16. I just want to resell clothing without dealing with men making inappropriate requests. I have a Poshmark account that I use to sell dresses or gowns I've worn previously for fundraisers, corporate dinners, etc. For the most part, this has been a fairly straightforward and uneventful experience. I've had an issue here or there, but that's it. With that said, I'd love to clean out my closet and sell some of my old leggings and shoes, but I just don't see how that's possible considering how many people sexualize these items. I've previously gotten messages from men who wanted to buy these and specifically stated their willingness to pay an exorbitant amount for items like these in well-worn condition. I know that some people would be okay with that, but I'm just not comfortable with it. Is the only solution to donate items to a women's shelter or something similar? I've done that in the past, but post-COVID it has been a little more complicated to donate. Stories number 17. My boyfriend took credit for my anniversary gift. My 23F boyfriend, 24M, really enjoys this specific sports team. Our anniversary was this past weekend, and I got us front row seats at a big game for them. I bought both of our tickets, and it ended up being more expensive than I initially thought. It was an amazing time, and definitely worth the price. I'm not a huge sports fan, but I am a huge fan of my boyfriend and I love seeing him in his element. It was absolutely a gift for both of us, and a great experience as a couple. However, yesterday he asked me to check some emails on his phone while he was driving. A text message popped up from one of his friends, mentioning me specifically. I hope, my name, thanked you generously LOL, so I clicked the text. He told his friend that he was the one who purchased the tickets and surprised me. I was a little irked by this. He has been struggling with money recently, some unexpected expenses really put a dent in his finances. He knows that I am better off and don't worry too much about spending. I know this is a sore subject for him and he gets embarrassed when he cannot afford something. There was no assumption that we would exchange presents for our anniversary, we never have, so he doesn't need to feel bad over not buying anything for me. I know my snooping was wrong, but I'm slightly offended by the messages he sent. If he feels emasculated by me purchasing expensive gifts then I just won't do it anymore. I wanted it to be a fun activity for us both, not something he has to lie to his friends about. Am I overreacting? Should I say something or just pretend I never saw the messages? Stories number 18. I was sad when I was 18 and became pregnant from it and I lied about it. When I was 18 I was raped by someone I trusted and thought was a friend. Afterward, he almost immediately went and turned everyone in our small town against me, almost like he knew he could scare me into never admitting what really happened. He recruited his friends and told a bunch of lies about me and said vile and awful things. Even had his friends come to my house to confront me for me being a liar and a slut. I knew if I reported him it would only get worse, so I tried to lay low hoping it would pass. That was until about a month after the rape, I found out I was pregnant. I was terrified. I hid my pregnancy for a while out of shame and just not wanting the guy or his friends to find out eventually. I told my mom about my pregnancy and I lied to her and told her I consensually had sex but the father didn't want to be involved. To this day, she thinks that's what happened. I eventually gave birth to a healthy baby boy and we have a really great life and he now has 2 siblings to play with as well. Even so, I wish I would have told someone the truth. Stories number 19. I'm trying to figure out what fragrance his coworker uses, who smells like hot dog SpaghettiOs. So I just got into wearing cologne and I am worried I may be projecting too much. Currently I just wear one spray of CDNIM sprayed on my chest beneath the undershirt button up. The girl in the cubicle next to me has been coughing and gagging a lot, but she was doing that even before I started wearing cologne, so I'm not sure if it's the projection or if I just naturally disgust her. Another girl may be a frag head because she always smells like Skittles. I'm not sure if she wears a perfume or if she just squirrels away some Skittles in her pouches. She didn't seem too bothered by my cologne, or at the very least wasn't gagging around me. There is a dude at my work that I for sure believe is a frag head. He always smells like SpaghettiOs, specifically the ones with hot dogs, so he must be into some niche scents. He complimented me saying I smelled good but not sure if I should trust his judgment. I guess my question is, how do I know if I am projecting too much? I think one spray is fine, but maybe I need something more tame for the office. Notable comments. Commenter 1. You need to ask Hot Dog SpaghettiO Man what his scent is and share it here. I simply must know. Commenter 2. Sweet gourmands are so 2024. 2025 will be the year of savory convenience food gourmands. Update. Some people asked me to find out what fragrance my coworker uses. I spoke with him today and asked about the cologne he uses. He said he doesn't wear any cologne as they trigger his allergies/asthma. I asked if he used any particular product to get his fragrance. Apparently he uses unscented soap and deodorant since he thinks the scented ones also affect his allergies. I guess he wasn't a frag head after all, or he is just trying to keep his fragrance to himself. I haven't seen him eating anything remotely Italian at work, so I'm thinking he just has a natural scent of sweet tomato paste and boiled hot dog water. It is definitely an acquired fragrance, but I grew up eating SpaghettiOs so it is a bit nostalgic. He doesn't smell fresh out of the can though. It smells as if the SpaghettiOs have been sitting out overnight. On a separate note, I didn't wear cologne today to test if my projection was causing the issue to my cubicle neighbor, as was my concern in the original post. She was gagging away as usual, so I am pretty confident it is not my cologne. The SpaghettiO man is in the cubicle next to her on the other side, so maybe his unique aroma is causing her distress. She may not have developed the same appreciation for the smell of spaghettis. Sorry for the disappointing update. I was sure he was wearing some sort of fragrance considering how strong it is. I guess some of us are just born lucky. Stories number 20. My sisters, life is so short. You deserve better. Every day, I see so many posts from women who deserve better, and it breaks my heart. There is a staggering number of posts in this vein. He is cheating, should I forgive? He raped me. Should I stay? He never wants to see me unless he needs something. Is it love? He demeans me in front of his friends, but he is so nice in private. Should I move in with him? He seems nice, but he wants to choke me. Should I let him? He wants me to quit my job. Is he the one? I am begging you all to realize that the answer to these questions is and will always be no. No, you don't have to live in fear of the next time his bad temper takes over. No, you don't have to accept spousal rape. No, you don't need to be his bang maid. No, you don't need to politely laugh at his sexist jokes. No, you don't need to pretend to like him. No, you don't need him in your life. You can do better. You are better than him. You can find happiness with another partner or alone. Your intuitions have already guided you to ask strangers for their opinion. It means you know something is off. A man who doesn't treat you well, doesn't respect you, doesn't care about your feelings and needs, is not the right partner, ever. Even if he was nice once. Be extremely discerning when you pick a partner, a co-parent, a mate of any kind. Think about Madame Giselle in France. You really need to be 200% sure. Don't waste your life trying to make things work with a bad partner. You deserve a great one. And if you can't find one, you deserve a happy and full life, not to live without happiness because you settled for a jerk. And maybe if there is just one thing to say, being alone isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. Living a shitty life because of a terrible partner is. P.S. Before the inevitable, this is privilege talking. Yes, I am aware that not all women can up and leave a bad man. I know this extremely well because I watched my mother work towards leaving her abusive partner when I was aged 5 to 7. I am thankful she had the strength and the luck on her side to succeed. She made a better life for us both and she is my hero. All I'm saying is that when possible, you don't have to stay or torture yourself about whether you can make it better. Stories number 21. My cousin's weird barefoot, techno, human pyramid wedding. Okay folks, this happened, like, 20 years ago. But I just discovered this hilarious sub and I thought y'all would appreciate the story. My cousin got married at this tiny little chapel on the campus of Texas Women's University. She didn't go to school there, but she lived nearby. The whole thing was pretty bizarre. She wore a bright red wedding dress that looked more like a prom dress, and the bridesmaids all wore black dresses and were required to be barefoot for some reason. She walked down the aisle to the classic "Here Comes the Bride" song, but it was some kind of weird Caribbean techno dance remix. They did the kiss 3 separate times during the ceremony, because my cousin kept starting it before the officiant told her to. And with every kiss, she would pull her husband down and make him dip her so that she was looking at the audience upside down, if you can picture that. Finally, when the service was over and they started taking photos, she made a human pyramid with her bridesmaids, with her on top. Oh, and one last thing, the officiant did this weird sermon where she spread out her fingers and said, "Today we're going to talk about the 5 L's of a successful marriage. The first L is love, and that's your thumb. The second L is listening, because we don't want to do this," and she stuck her pointer finger in her ear. I don't remember the rest, because right after that, one of the baby's presents started crying and my dad took the opportunity to take him outside and escape the nonsense. FYI, that marriage lasted maybe a year. She's much more normal and happily remarried now, though. Stories number 22. Aita for telling my parents and grandparents their delusions are why my half-brother could ruin Christmas for everyone. My parents hosted Christmas last year and it was a shit show. They had me, 17M, and my younger sister, 13F, there and then my grandparents on both sides and my half-brother, 25M. My paternal grandparents had to convince him to show up because he doesn't talk to my parents or to me and my sister. He showed up anyway and he had let his mom know and she showed up and threw a rock through our window and tried to attack my mom. The police had to be called and she was arrested and there was a fight that broke out between my dad and half-brother and my sister was upset so I had to take her upstairs and comfort her because she didn't remember an experience like it before. None of this came as a big shock to me. It's not the first time my half-brother's mom did that. When I was 6 she was arrested for attacking my mom in front of all of us. My half-brother ended up living with us all the time instead of half the time after that. And he defended his mom and always said he didn't care that his mom attacked my mom and he wouldn't have cared if his mom had killed my mom. He told us he didn't even care if his mom killed me and my sister. He told Dad over and over again that he didn't want to live with us, but Dad said he was the only parent who wasn't in jail, so he needed to be with us, his family. Life while my half-brother lived with us was tough, and when he was 17 he left after saying he hoped my mom watched her back because his mom was free to do what she wanted, and he went to live with his mom. My parents never stopped trying to bring him back in, and they'd get annoyed if I didn't show any interest in my half-brother visiting. Whenever we'd see him at my grandparents' I stayed out of the way and kept my sister with me. They said we're family and all that kind of thing. I never wanted to be around him. He was scary when I was younger, and then I felt like I needed to protect myself in case he sicked his mom on us again. Because apparently that time she attacked my mom he had known it would happen and helped her plan it. My parents and grandparents were all going crazy after Christmas because of what happened, and they acted so surprised by what went down. They talked to my sister and she was really upset, and they told her it was abnormal and there was no way we could have known. When they talked to me about it I told them I didn't need a talk and we should focus on my sister because she never lived through that shit and had no idea how bad he was. They said he might have ruined Christmas, but he's still my brother, and I told them he only played a part because it was really down to them. If they hadn't gone so far out of their way to convince him to come when he clearly didn't want to, it would never have happened, and I told them they ignored the past so much it made them even more delusional because he never changed how he felt about it. They didn't like me calling them delusional, and they told me I would never understand the complexities. I told them they'd never understand that I have dealt with it shit my whole life, and I can read the room and see he doesn't give a fuck about us and doesn't care what happens, and that it's a bad mix when being pressured to attend something. I told them I knew he'd have to let her kill one of us and still defend his mother before they might open their eyes. And now they're all pissed at me. Aita. Stories number 23. Update to my post about my sister having my bike stolen and dumped. Our parents decided to move my bratty sister out for her own good. XL. I was just browsing YouTube yesterday when I saw a video about my last post. And I realized I never made a final update. So here it is. To start things off, yes, my bike is fine. I managed to avoid anything on it getting rusty or clogged up after my sister had it dumped in a pond. It already was not new, and there were no new creaks or groans from it. I was worried something on it would go bad. But it's a really simple single-speed bike. So it works just fine after having everything oiled after being submerged in water. I re-greased the crank bearings anyway. I've also changed out the rear tube and tire myself a few months ago, and I still ride practically everywhere. On to my brat of a sister. She barely managed to pass college. And she did try to blame her low grades on me and depression from the bike incident multiple times. But even our parents stopped allowing her to do that. They finally hit their limits and started cracking down on her bad behavior, and made her sit in her room and study whenever she had a pity party or tantrum. They threatened to cut off the Wi-Fi and shut off her phone multiple times if she didn't actually get her homework done. She cried and said she hated them, but she sucked it up and finally did as told. She finally managed to graduate. But her graduation was not a very fun time for her. We all went out to celebrate with her. But she was just not happy. And the reason why is because she has no friends anymore. And she'd hoped to party with her former clique friends after graduation, but they all cut her off some time ago because she's a brat. As an ironic punishment, our parents started making my sister ride a bicycle to get around. She hated it more than she hates the bus. It's a cruiser bike our dad picked up used for her. And our parents practically begged me to take her out on weekend rides to get her out of the house for a few hours. And I did, but only because they asked nicely and offered dinner. Last we spoke of it, my sister still held firm she believes it's wrong to eat at the hospital for some reason. But couldn't find any valid reason to justify it when asked why by anyone. Literally no one sided with her about it anymore. Even our parents admitted they no longer find it weird after being told the cafeteria is actually a separate business from the hospital. And as another show to the family, they actually went with me to have a family lunch at the hospital a couple of times. And they forced my sister to come along. She looked weirdly fidgety, and openly said she couldn't believe they made her eat there when it was against her beliefs. She kind of worded it in a way as like it was against her religion, or something. And was told off for exactly that. So she just cried like she always did. But was told to grow up. I think she was just standing by her so-called beliefs because she'd have to admit she was wrong to herself if she did. And she just wouldn't do that. There have been times I questioned if she's not just a spoiled control freak, but a narcissist too. Though I'm far from qualified to diagnose anyone, my sister's clique all ended up abandoning her as a friend because being involved with her screwed them over too. Since at least two of them shared in her plan to steal my bike and dump it, they all got hazed for it when word got out. So the clique blamed my sister for everything, and stopped talking to her to save their own reputations. While I didn't file a police report, the two girls who stole my bike did get in big trouble with their families. And that minivan they were driving. It turned out it was borrowed from one of their parents. And they stopped allowing its use after finding out what happened. The parents who owned the minivan even visited me to apologize to me on behalf of their daughter, and also asked for a copy of the video I took. Which I gave. Even though they were fully complicit, the clique put it all on my sister and threw her under the bus to everyone. I guess now my sister knows how it feels to be the scapegoat. She was also laughed at for a while since she was forced to ride a bike to and from college since our parents decided it was cheaper than the bus, and my sister no longer had friends to carpool with. And no, her bike was not stolen or vandalized. My sister just hated it. Our dad has also forced her to learn how to fix and maintain the bike herself too. He used to tinker on bikes in his youth, and still has the tools around. So he knows enough to do all his own work on bikes. Even though he no longer rides them himself. And he taught me the basics of working on them too, for those who said that my sister would do something even more crazy or retaliate against me. She did nothing of the sort. She's just bitter. She was made to get counseling, and it's improved her slightly. But if it has any real effect, for all I know it'll take years to see a change in her. But she doesn't try to boss me around anymore. I've been called over for dinner by my parents a number of times since my last post. And my sister barely speaks to me at the table. And she seemed further annoyed by the fact I was completely unbothered by it too. She's been told by everyone, even our parents to an extent, that she destroyed her own reputation. But she can't seem to stop putting blame on me because she needs a scapegoat. I also chained and locked my bike whenever I visited home from the prank incident onward. Just in case. After my sister finished college, my parents suddenly announced that my sister was moving out of their house. She openly did not want to. But they forced her to get a job immediately, and made her find an apartment. They said her party days were over, and it's time they made her learn about adult life. Multiple relatives told my parents that my sister wouldn't really grow up unless she lives on her own and pays her own bills. My parents deliberated about it for some time, because she was obviously their golden child. But my sister would never become an adult so long as they kept things as they were. My sister is still not happy about it at all, because she loved being a spoiled leech. But she couldn't blame me for that, as I was not involved in this decision in any way. And she knows it. But she had multiple, it was just a bike, tantrums when she was trying to put the blame on me when things weren't going well for her at college. Our mother once smacked her upside the head and told her to stop acting like I was the one causing all her problems. And it wasn't just a bike to me, it's borderline my livelihood since it's my primary mode of transportation. Currently my sister shares a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 other girls. She had to be moved further away so her reputation wouldn't follow her when she got a job. My mother really cried over that. My sister is working in an office, and learning how to be a secretary. But she moans and groans about hating her current life, but also tries to rub it in my face about what she'll do when she makes better money than me. I just told her, you do you, and she got mad I didn't take the bait. She does not like her roommates, and still has to ride the bike our father got her to get around. Her commute isn't far. Just a few miles, so she doesn't waste money on the bus, and walking is too slow for her. She wanted, if not practically demanded our parents to buy her a car since they kicked her out of the house, and they refused to get her one. Which made her stop talking to them for a while. I think it's probably pretty obvious my sister and I don't go on bike rides together anymore. That stopped as soon as she moved out. While we were still doing weekend rides together, my sister tried multiple immature plugs she could think of at me. I don't even remember most of them, because I just ignored her taunts and didn't even act irritated. Then she'd call me dense or special ed, and would roll her eyes. Among her repeated immature taunts, one was trying to say things like her bike is better than mine, because it actually has gears. But she could never outpace me anyway. It kinda seemed to make her determined to get in better shape at least. I think she just wants me to be the big loser, so she doesn't feel like one. My sister obviously wants a car, but can't afford one on her own yet because she's not good at saving. She wanted our parents to buy her an e-bike for Christmas, and they refused after seeing how much good ones cost. My sister has already cost them a lot of money anyway since they covered all 3 years of her college. As a bit of a joke on Christmas, I gave her new tires for her bike. Which she gave me the stink eye for. Our parents also had to bail her out financially a couple of times in 2024, because she didn't manage her finances well. At this point, despite how much she's been beat down to the consequences of real life, she still acts like a spoiled brat in denial. But otherwise she is somehow managing. Though another thing she's used to be angry at me about these days is the fact I live alone, and she has to have roommates to afford rent. I've met her roommates too, and they actually seemed to really like me. Which really upset my sister more. I think the reason she hates all of them so much is because they don't bend to her will like our parents used to. She really hates it when people don't do what she wants. So it must be a nightmare for her to be living with people who don't put up with any of her demands. That about sums up everything till now. Stories number 24. On male loneliness and the expectation I will play therapist for every man I meet. This was originally a comment on a thread about men and women having different competing needs, which I find bio-essentialist and lacking nuance anyway. All people have different needs and similar ones. Humans are diverse, adaptable and also will always share more in common than we have different IMO. But patriarchy has created quite a situation for us. Especially now for Western society, especially as patriarchal men are starting to realize they miss being empowered and having women as commodities. And this situation is on my mind. I simply think that far too many good and bad-natured men expect their wives, girlfriends and mothers to be their sole support system and do constant emotional labor. Men deserve to be emotionally vulnerable, but no one is entitled to another's time, investment or support. This is an issue a ton of women face of having to take on that labor single-handedly because of men who have a support system of one. It is always unhealthy to rely solely on one person. I'd argue because of stoic expectations on men under patriarchy, they are more likely to put their support person in a circumstance where they are holding that burden single-handedly. As much as men have a right to be annoyed that I have strong boundaries around the emotional labor I'll do, especially for those who would rely on me without returning the favor, I simply do not think it is a help to anyone to return to the patriarchal status quo of women expected to be therapists and mommies to all men they met. Men deserve emotional support by people who understand their lived experience. Instead of men relying on women to emotionally support them, labor they sometimes don't have the skills to reciprocate, men should form support groups for themselves. What's wrong with a man's retreat? This is why I responded to that original comment. Men are allowed to communicate that they don't have emotional support and women are still allowed to say okay but I'm not doing it for you because you expect a labor from me that you won't return. Many women have very valid and historically founded reasons for being wary about doing emotional labor for men, especially the kind that takes on a responsibility that's really more for a therapist than a friend or a partner. These women have reasons for not wanting to take on that labor, just as much as the men who are lonely and need support have reasons for being that way. All I'm saying is that even though men's mental health is a real issue, I don't think it's women's responsibility to take on the burden of being a therapist on call for people in their life, and I think anyone who has a boundary around that is perfectly understandable. If men want emotional support, I think they ought to turn to each other. Today, instead, I find most men trying to develop emotional intelligence are relying exclusively on one woman friend or partner, which is codependent and places a burden of labor on one person. Often I meet new men I want to be friends with, show them I'm welcoming and accepting of vulnerability, and all of a sudden they expect me to drop everything and anything for them. I had a boy flip out I wouldn't skip my first class of the semester at a prestigious college to help him find a backpack. He literally started stalking me because I set boundaries about emotionally supporting him through his distress about losing a backpack. This is the sort of unhealthy expectation of emotional labor men place on women in their life. I will not sacrifice my goals, education, or my own healing for someone else. Anyone who asks me to is not being very considerate of my autonomy and humanity. That burden of such labor, codependent emotional work, is unhealthy. Women support each other reciprocally and often have boundaries with each other. Queer people are the same. This is why we can be vulnerable without getting shut down. Patriarchy certainly punishes men for being vulnerable. But I'm tired of women being blamed when they often have very real and healthy boundaries. Men are by far the main emotionally codependent people I've met, who seek support from someone outside of their lived experience, but expect empathy and self-abandonment for support instead of just looking for people with shared healing journeys to heal together. Why is it women's responsibility to solve male mental health? Why can't they take responsibility of their own healing? I'm declaring it now, I'll help anyone seeking healing, but it is not my job to carry anyone but myself. The only people I'm teaching basic skills and empathy are children. And if you're an adult man expecting me to do that labor for you, you're out of luck bud. Stories number 25. Aita for refusing to give up my seat on the plane so a boy could sit next to his father, and to tell the father to behave himself. Not the a-hole. So basically I, 29M, boarded my short flight, 70 minutes, which has a 2-to-2 seating arrangement. I had booked myself a window seat, and when I got there I saw a maybe 7-year-old boy sitting in there, next to his father, about 50 years old, in the aisle seat. The opposite row also had his mother and his sister sitting there. Although this happened less than 24 hours ago, I was exhausted, so I don't remember the conversation word for word. I pointed towards my seat and the father asked me if I would mind swapping so they could sit together, and that their seat is in the row behind it. I said that I would only swap if it is a window seat, and he said it is an aisle seat. Then I said I wouldn't swap, and the following conversation happened. Him: so do you want to sit next to my son? Me: I don't care, I just want the window seat. Him, standing up and getting his son up: you are a very nice person. I mean, not a very nice person. Me: it's none of your business, and be polite. Him: I am not, referring to polite. Me: I said something I don't remember, and behave yourself. I just stood there looking at him serious. I think he was trying to shame me initially, but he didn't respond anything else to that. His wife was watching this the whole time. When somebody in the row behind saw it, he offered to swap and sat next to me, so they did eventually sit next to each other. For all I care, they could have sat 20 rows apart or even booked a new flight. I had zero investment in this or their reasons. They can ask, I can say no, and that should be the end of it. I didn't like that the swap happened before I approved it either. If they care that much, they can book their seats in advance like everyone else. I didn't have a good reason why I need the window seat except that I like it and don't like the aisle seat, lol. Stories number 26. I'm a massive savings nerd. Here are the stupidest money mistakes I see people make. 1. Overpaying for car insurance. The average American saves a whopping $410 plus a year. Source: when they switch auto insurance carriers, sometimes significantly more than that. I saved $1,300 this year. The reason: some carriers offer discount prices to new customers when they switch. Take 30 seconds and go to a third-party comparison site to see if you can find cheaper rates. You'll likely save yourself a bunch of money. Some people suggest switching every 6 months. That's a little bit overkill. Once a year should be fine. 2. Overpaying when you shop online. Big stores like Amazon know that no one has time to price shop through dozens of sites, so there's often no incentive for them to offer bargain prices. I typically hate browser extensions with a fiery passion, but Capital One shopping has always worked well for me, and I'd recommend trying it. When you shop online, on Amazon or elsewhere, it will automatically compare prices for you, and auto-apply coupon codes when possible. 3. Paying for subscriptions you don't use. We've all signed up for free trials and forgotten to cancel them. Stop paying for services you aren't using. Take a minute and get yourself a good cancellation app. I like Rocket Money. It's an app that will put together a list of your subscriptions so you can choose which ones to cancel. They also have a premium service that will cancel them for you, if you'd like. 4. Dealing with debt on your own. If you've got $10,000 plus in unsecured debt, think credit cards, medical bills, etc., you can ask a debt relief company to come in and negotiate it for you. You typically will save around 23% on average, after their fees. Here's a link to a savings calculator from National Debt Relief's website if you want to see how much you could save. 5. Not having a financial advisor. You know why so many rich people have financial advisors? It isn't because they're better at picking stocks. Spoiler alert, they're not. It's because a good financial advisor will help you with all of the bizarro tax implications you never would have thought of. People with financial advisors end up making 3% more year thanks to better tax planning. If you don't know an advisor personally, use a third-party comparison site to find somebody with good reviews. Wiser Advisor is solid. 6. Using normal, low-interest savings accounts. I'm always shocked at the number of people still using garbage savings accounts that pay 0.5% or less a year. There are literally hundreds of banks that will pay you 8x that, usually 10x that rate. 7. Needing cash, but taking out high-interest loans. So many people take out high-interest payday loans. Please don't do this. If you get into trouble, you can typically get a relatively low-interest HELOC, a home equity line of credit. Essentially, with a HELOC, you're borrowing against the equity you have in your house and use it for whatever you need, much like a credit card. Typically, you'll get lower interest rates and more flexible repayment terms compared to traditional loans. Here's a calculator you can use to see how much/little you could borrow, link here. Side note, if you hate debt, you can still get money out of your home's equity by using something like HomeTap, where you more or less sell investors a portion of your equity without a loan. There are tons of other things, obviously, but these are the ones that I see the most. Hope that helps. Stories number 27. This is your permission to be rude if something doesn't feel right. Yesterday at 10 p.m., I was chilling in my car watching a YouTube video in a near-empty parking lot. A man approached and signaled for me to roll down the window. I cracked the window and he asked if I could jump his car a few spots down from me. I said I didn't have jumper cables, and he said we could use his. Now the thing is, he seemed like a totally normal man in his mid-late 20s. He was polite, he smiled. But I didn't like the scenario. I didn't like that it was so late and that there was no one else around. So I told him yes, rolled up my windows, and drove off. He was not in a life or death situation. He has a phone, can flag down another person, or walk a block to the gas station to ask for help. He was probably baffled and thought I was rude. But at the end of the day, he's a stranger, and it doesn't matter what he thinks of me. He wasn't in immediate danger, and I didn't like the situation. So I left. Edit to add. A lot of women here are rightfully saying to trust your intuition in a scenario like this. While that's 100% true, that wasn't necessarily the case for me here. Honestly, the vibes were fine. I felt calm the whole time, and for a moment I did almost consider helping him. But when weighing the facts, I realized the safest option was for me to just leave. So while yes, it's absolutely vital to trust your gut when it's telling you to leave, it's also important to realize when you're in a potentially dangerous situation, even if your gut feels fine. Stories number 28. BF's sister throwing not one but two parties celebrating her relationship and treating them like weddings. Cringe. My boyfriend and I have been together 2.5 years. His sister, 32F, and her partner, 37F, have been together for 4.5 years. For the purposes of this post, I'm calling them FSAL and FBAL, even though we're not engaged, it's just easier, lol. A year ago, FSAL and FBIL had a quasi-engagement party wherein they stated they weren't ready to get married, so this was as close as it's going to get for the foreseeable future. I know FBIL doesn't want to get married and FSIL identifies as edgy and unconventional but is internally very traditional. After the party, we heard through the family that FSIL was disappointed by how it turned out because she wanted it to be grander and more special feeling than it was. She planned a house party at their apartment with a terrible/closed-off layout, and we played bingo with fun facts about the couple, and it was run by the couple themselves, which was very cringe because they were talking in third person. The party was about 5 hours long and leaving early was strongly frowned upon. Then, 6 months later, she announces that they'll be having a quasi-wedding, which is just another party asking us to celebrate them as a couple, this time at a basement bar/stage place. They themselves are emceeing and performing, the two of them are not performers. The dress code is black tie minimum. Black tie minimum, and we anticipate the mandatory programming, her words, not mine, being another 5-hour affair. I'm totally down with commitment ceremonies and stuff like that, but this is literally just the second look at us. We're still together, party they're having, and they're asking us to treat it like a wedding. Stories number 29. The wedding I wasn't invited to. I never thought I'd be the type of person who would feel hurt by not being invited to a wedding. After all, there are always so many reasons why people don't get invited, but when it happened to me, I was blindsided and it completely broke me. Let me start at the beginning. My name is Grace, and I had been friends with Emma for over a decade. We met in high school and instantly clicked. We shared everything. The ups, the downs, the heartbreaks, the triumphs. We were there for each other through thick and thin, and I thought that our bond was unbreakable. After we graduated, we both went off to different colleges, but we kept in touch. We would visit each other, send long texts, and share every little moment of our lives. When Emma got engaged, I was ecstatic for her. Her fiancé, Matt, was an amazing guy, and I knew they were perfect for each other. I was over the moon to be a part of her wedding. I had always imagined that I'd stand by her side as her maid of honor, like she had always promised me. But as the months went by, something started to change. Emma became distant. I could feel it, but I didn't want to believe it. She stopped replying to my texts as quickly, and when we did talk, it felt like there was an invisible wall between us. I chalked it up to wedding stress. I mean, planning a wedding can be overwhelming, right? As the wedding day got closer, I kept waiting for her to bring up the details of the ceremony. I kept waiting for her to ask me to be part of it, but that conversation never came. Instead, one evening, I saw a social media post announcing her bridal party, and there, in the photos, were all of our old friends, everyone but me. My heart sank as I saw her with her other bridesmaids, smiling and laughing together. I couldn't bring myself to comment on the post, but I did message her privately, trying to be casual but also vulnerable. Hey, I saw the post about your bridal party. I just wanted to say congratulations. I'm so happy for you. Emma replied almost immediately, thanks, Grace. I'm glad you're excited for me. That was it. No mention of why I wasn't included, no acknowledgement of our years of friendship, nothing. I tried to shrug it off. Maybe it was an oversight, maybe she had a reason, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As the days passed, I became more anxious. I found myself scrolling through wedding photos and posts, feeling a pang of jealousy every time I saw her with her new friends. They were laughing, bonding, creating memories that I thought should have been mine too. I began to wonder if she was pushing me away. I called her one evening, my heart racing. Emma, can we talk? There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and when she spoke, her voice was strained. Of course, what's going on? I hesitated, trying to find the right words. I just don't understand why I'm not in your wedding party. I mean, we've been friends for so long. I thought I would be a part of it. Did I do something wrong? Another long silence. I could hear her breathing, and I could feel the weight of the conversation settling in. Grace, she finally said, her voice soft but firm, I just think it's better this way. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I don't want things to get complicated. I'm sorry, but I made a decision. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The words hit me harder than I could have imagined. I tried to keep my voice steady. What do you mean by complicated? We're best friends, Emma. We've been through so much together. I know, she said quietly, but I have other people who are more in tune with my life right now. I didn't want to hurt you, but I think this is the best way. The call ended shortly after that, and I was left in a fog of confusion and heartbreak. I tried to understand what had just happened. Was it because I was no longer the person I used to be to her? Was I too much of a reminder of her past? I had no answers. The wedding day came, and when I didn't attend, I didn't even want to. How could I show up to a celebration of love when I felt like I had been forgotten? I spent the entire weekend alone, scrolling through social media, watching all of Emma's happy posts with her new circle of friends, while my heart slowly shattered. Weeks passed, and Emma never reached out to me. I saw her with her new bridesmaids at brunches and parties, laughing, the kind of bond one thought we had, but there was nothing left for me. I became a ghost in her life, just a faded memory. The pain of not being invited to the wedding has stayed with me, but over time, I've started to understand something crucial. Sometimes, people change. Sometimes, they move on, and we're left behind. I don't think Emma intentionally meant to hurt me, but that doesn't make the pain any less real. I still wonder what went wrong, but I'm starting to accept that maybe some friendships just aren't meant to last forever. Maybe we grow apart, and that's okay. The most heartbreaking part of it all is that I thought we would be there for each other through every milestone, through the good and the bad, but now, I have to learn to let go and find peace with the fact that we no longer share the same path. And maybe that's the hardest part of all. Stories number 30. Imposter. Fraud. Okay, so, I am thinking about the business I am stepping into. I admittedly did not have a huge passion for said industry. I enjoyed it and have used this type of product for some years of my life, early years, etc. Never thought it would be possible to get into and start my own company like this. I had no idea how one would even do it, never really looked into it. But I did some searching and found it is possible to do. I always wanted my own business, and have been looking for years for the right product to start with. I kind of got burnt out with my original passion and wanted something else. Totally different kind of industry. Now I'm thinking I may be kind of stupid for getting into an industry I'm a newbie at. Now my issue kinda is, should I even have this business? I feel like it's suited for someone with extreme interest or more knowledge, passion. I do have passion for it, but it's fairly new to me. There is kind of no turning back. I have no job. No skills really. I have a degree but never technically used it. Not a good resume by any means. All I have is this little passion, that I'm new at. Most people don't start a business, let alone one that they're kind of new into exploring. I had this idea and got all excited, ran with it, paid thousands of dollars to create. So there is no turning back. Can anyone just let me know if I am considered a fraud? I'm not claiming extreme knowledge or anything. I fell in love with these types of cosmetics, the ingredients, packaging, etc. Now here I am having my own thoughts. Stories number 31. Aita for choosing another guy over him. Advice needed. I was talking to a guy, who will be named Caesar in this story, and we were talking for a month. We used to talk in May, but we had stopped because he had sexual relations with his ex as we were talking at the time. At a party I meet this guy named Salad. Salad was really cute and me and him were just playing tag. During the party I'd admit I was all over Caesar, like I was touching him and he was really close, but like I said we were in a talking stage. After I had left the party Salad was asking my friends who I was and if I was single. Salad had gotten my IG from my friend and then asked Caesar if he thinks he could bag me. The reasonable response Caesar said was, "No BC, I want her." Everyone was already telling Salad to avoid me since me and Caesar were starting to get close. Caesar was never the best of the best guy for me, and plus he was my ex's friend. There was many reasons why we wouldn't work. Like how this one time me and him had, and afterwards he left to get weed. Didn't stay or nothing, and that was a red flag to me, besides how he had already did me in May. After a while me and Salad had just been liking each other's stories and Salad would always try and text me or respond to my stories. One day I heard that, rumored or not, Caesar and his ex met up again and had, after he was just complaining about her. The story lines up with numerous events and it had really made it my last straw. That same night Salad had texted me, and I decided to give him a chance and I gave him my number. We really hit it off and I started to really like him, but I was still worried about Caesar. I did a pros and cons list, and I felt as if I gravitate more towards Salad than Caesar. I feel like I would have had a better RLS and connection with him than Caesar. A day later I decided to break it off with Caesar and tell him we were better off as friends. I think he's sort of but hurt. He called me a few days later just talking about how he missed having someone to talk to every day and having his own special person. Then I see him at school and he's still like, oh, I can only hug you as a friend now and I can't flirt with you anymore. And then he had just kept saying things like, I missed you over break, would you come back, and even asked for a kiss. OFC, I feel bad for breaking it off with him because I really liked him, but as time went through, I fell for someone else and I didn't want to drag him on.